It was noontime today in the center of Beijing when a man walked to the middle of the Avenue of Eternal Peace,
Well, all right. Welcome back to the Survival and Basic Badass Podcast, Kevin and Chuck. Well, today we're going to talk about your whole world being turned upside down. Well, how about the magnetic poles being turned upside down? That's pretty much the whole world. We'll call it that. But we're going to dig into it. There's been some crazy movies. I think 2012. I think The Core had some aspects of it that kind of, relate, but we'll
Mhm.
dig deep into it. But basically, the magnetic poles are moving. This is a undisputed scientific fact. But what would the consequences be, and would the world end? That's what we're going to dig into. So, this is your kind of thing. You might want to like, subscribe, that kind of thing. We'd appreciate it. It really helps out. But yeah, let's kind of jump into it. So, the magnetic pole, right? We use the magnetic North Pole for a lot of things, right? The obvious that comes to mind, we use compasses and GPS.
Mhm.
That's a big thing that relates to us. But it turns out there's a lot bigger consequences that may be at stake here, and we're going to kind of dig into it. Now, basically, every 200 to 300,000 years, we believe there's been a pole shift where the North and South Pole actually completely flip from one end of the earth to the other. And we're talking from the top to the bottom, like shift done. And that's a big thing, and it's dramatic. Now, the last time we believe that it's happened or know that it's happened is about 780,000 years ago. Now you're saying, well, if it's every 200 to 300,000, we're a little bit overdue. Now, a little disclaimer, Kevin, I have to put this out that I was not there when this happened the last
You
time.
didn't see it, right?
So this is speculation based on science. And
Mhm.
we all know how people feel about science now. Science is like experts agree. That's kind of what we got here. Not the evidence shows. We're going to try and stick to the evidence shows, but you know, we also have some things to dig into. Kevin, your insights here before I go off on a tirade?
Yeah, apparently, like this is a common thing. It's happened.
Okay.
They say it's happened several hundred times in the last 160 million years, and I think that that's basically just as far back as they can check. It's probably been happening,
Or
since the
guesstimation.
beginning of Earth, right? So, like you said, the last time it happened was 780,000 years ago. It's been a while. That doesn't really mean anything, though. I mean, it doesn't. It's not like it happens every certain amount of time. It's just statistically random. It can happen
Mhm.
twice. Closely together. It can happen. Big time
But
periods apart. But
right.
it happens.
Now there are signs though that when it's about to and things like that. And that's I guess why it's been kind of the topic lately and people are getting a little concerned.
Right.
So I do have a map from NOAA, and basically what they're talking about is it basically shifted every about since 1831. It was shifting. Basically, the North Pole is shifting towards Siberia. It was going about 16 kilometers a year. And now we're at 55 kilometers a year. Basically, since about 1990, it started getting really dramatic. Now, it has declined a little bit where we're back down around, I don't know, it looks like about 38 kilometers a year the last year or two.
Hmm.
But kind of people are worried that that little lull is right before kind of the big one. Like it makes a
Big shift.
dramatic shift and then it goes. But now, so you have a lot of concerns here. Let's kind of dig into those concerns. So obviously, magnetic north, it affects, the way that animals migrate. That's a big thing.
Right.
Now people have a less devastating version and a horrible end of the world version. Most people think that, hey, when we look at the fossil structure and stuff, there wasn't a big die off when it happened related to this as far as animals. So we
Mhm.
don't think we're all just gonna like run into walls and die, but it's definitely gonna confuse and affect migration patterns and change things dramatically as far as that goes. So that could disrupt things. Obviously, we have a lot of birds. Is it all birds? I know bats, and whales and all these things actually have like a inert, in their head. I know dogs do. That's why they turn when they poop.
Mhm.
Have
Oh,
you
is that what
seen
it is?
Yeah, dogs walk in a circle because they want to be in alignment when they take a crap. And that's why they take a
Makes
look it
sense.
up. It's a true thing. I dug into that one time, and, yeah, that's an ugly road. But the bigger thing is we have a geomagnetic field around the planet. Think of it in simplest terms as, like, the ozone layer and all that stuff. We have a
Mhm.
shield that protects us from the sun. Well, the problem is when this typically happens, the depreciation of or depletion, right, of that geomagnetic field, we expect a 90% reduction in that protection at some point when it does this. Well,
Right.
that means that the UV and everything hitting you is going to be dramatic. It
Right.
also
Get your
means
sunscreen.
right. Now, like in the movie The Core, like the sun, I think, was like burning people's faces and things like that. It's not going
Yeah.
to be like that. We're not talking like that. We're talking a lot worse, but still survivable, right? Your
Mhm.
face isn't going to burn off. You're not going to be able to light cigarettes from the air. That's Kevin's dream. He's like, oh,
Mhm.
if I could just hold out, whatever. That's probably not going to be the thing. But that atmospheric level that we have around the planet also protects us from solar flares.
Right.
Oh, so that's kind of a big thing that
Mhm.
you might think, wait, shouldn't I have EMP shield? Wouldn't that protect me? Yes, it would. It's pretty smart. You guys are
That's right.
sharp out there. So that's the thing, right? You might look into things like that. That's one of the things you could kind of protect for. But you run the risk of satellites and all that stuff. They're protected by this magnetic field, and it's going to decrease by 90%, they believe. That's a big thing.
Right.
So there was actually a big storm where they had a big power outage in the Iberian Peninsula. To normal people, that would be Spain and Portugal, I think.
Right.
And the 28th of April. And they're saying they noticed a big spike in solar panel like stuff. Like it got a surge of UV radiation. And they're definitely saying from a corona mass ejection, but they're kind of thinking it might be related to a degradation in the magnetosphere here. And the next thing I got here is June 17th and 19th, also another solar kind of storm in North America, kind of in the northern half, where it
Mhm.
disrupted a lot of communication and stuff like that. They're just
Yeah.
saying these things are becoming more frequent. They weren't huge dramatic events that ended the world, but look them up. They're real. They were a thing, and it's kind of something that could be happening.
Yeah. Power failures, internet failures, communications failures, all sorts of stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
it definitely
Now,
can affect satellites. It can affect a lot of our infrastructure.
right. Now, we don't need to be like 100% full on panic as far as the GPS and all that stuff. Believe it or not, since it's moving 55 kilometers every year for the last couple of years, we actually make adjustments to GPS and that
Hmm.
stuff. We calculate it and we update it. So it is possible that even when it shifts, we can calculate an update. Now, it doesn't mean if you're the guy flying the plane on Tuesday, you might have a problem.
Right.
But if it may not be a problem like the end of the world, there's no more GPS, everything has to be redone. You know, the way they acted like in what 2000 or whatever, the world was going to end, you know,
Yeah,
because the computer's
2012. Yeah.
flipping. Oh no, in
Oh yeah,
2000 though, with the
2000.
computers rolling over, right?
Yeah.
So it's not going to be like, well, it kind of is going to be like that. It's not going to be like we thought that was going to be. That's the thing.
Right. Right. I remember when 99 rolled over to 2000, I went down to Times Square because I wanted to be there
You
if
did.
all the shit
You
went
did.
down.
I know that
And
was seemed like bad judgment on my part, but I was like, that's Kevin.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic. I was right outside the MTV building, and there's some drunk girl that kept going up and dancing in front of everybody in the window, and Carson Daly had to keep going over there and grabbing her and dragging her away from the window. But it was entertaining, regardless. What I wanted to talk about though was Edgar Casey.
Oh,
Do you remember him?
I do. He was
was
a bit of a I would almost say prophet, right? Almost like Nostradamus.
Yeah, he was
He
a
would lay
clairvoyant.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he would lay down and like speak his visions or something.
Yeah, he would go into a trance and
Mhm.
would just like give out predictions, but people like wrote everything down. Now he predicted a cataclysm. He called it earth changes. In the 1930s, he was predicting this. What he predicted was the polar axis would shift and that many areas that are now land would become ocean floor, and that Atlantis would rise from the sea, and other like lost continents would like emerge, like the lost continent of Mu, which is I think
Right.
was just like a made
Now
up
he
thing. I don't think
predicted
that's
some
real.
dates, right? That maybe
Yeah.
aren't 100% like they've come and gone, and it didn't.
Yeah,
happen.
we kind of passed. It's supposed to happen in 1958. I think was the when it was supposed to happen. Hasn't happened yet, but I don't know. Atlantis could show up at any time. We don't
could
know.
have found it.
Do you remember when we lived in
Go ahead.
Virginia Beach?
All right.
When we were both in the Navy, there was a place called the Association for Research and Enlightenment. That was his building. Like he founded it. And so if you ever are in Virginia Beach, you go over there and you can get like all sorts of clairvoyant merchandising and stuff. I guess I don't know what they really do there, but apparently they're researching
your own telepathy game, right?
They're researching telepathy, new age shit, all that sort of stuff. Go over there and check it out, man. You can get in on the ground floor there. That's where everything's happening. So his predictions, a lot of them did come true, but this one hasn't come true according to the dates he gave. So we'll see what happens over the next 200 or 300 years. Maybe
Now,
he'll
I actually have
loose.
a map, and they call it the future map of America. And this has been like a big thing on like X and stuff. And so they seem to think that if there's a pole shift, now this is not widely accepted big, like this isn't exactly what NOAA and NASA and all these people are saying. This is kind of the speculation that if you change magnetic north, all this stuff's kind of controlled by tides and stuff and everything. Now, I would point out that tides are from the moon, kind of. There's a thing there. There's a connection, right? The Indians knew about it. They used to, there's some kind of lady up there, and I don't know exactly how it works, what she's doing, but when she's angry at, something about the tides, but tides are affected by magnetic fields, and they think that there'll be a big, shift with that. And they also think the Younger Dryas was tied to the last pole shift, that flood that came was related. So yeah, they have something called the future map of America. And basically it gets rough. America kind of takes a pretty good hit as far as flooding and things from this disruption. Looks like maybe California disappears, Louisiana disappears, like anything along the Mississippi. You pretty much have like a clear path from the Gulf of Mexico right up to the Great Lakes. It's
Right.
just solid. I mean, I know you're like, well, yeah, Chuck, have you heard of the mighty Mississippi? And yeah, but it gets bigger. Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, we lose, I'd say, the bottom half of North Carolina. A good bit of Georgia takes a big hit. About half of Arizona becomes beachfront, and Colorado kind of beachfront, and in Nebraska has some ocean contact. So Nevada's just gone, Utah, California gone. So it gets a little crazy. And then some mystery island pops up off North America. I'm not really
That
sure.
might be Atlantis, dude. That's what
That-
Edgar Casey was talking about.
oh shoot, you're probably right on that. So I'm just saying there's some things here that could be happening. So just be aware that, so how would you I don't know, is there more thoughts on devastation here, or like
Yeah, well, they're talking about I mean, basically it would be global blackouts. It would be
right,
basically mean that any electrical infrastructure that we have in the world would be
right.
wiped out.
I think it's
Um,
pretty much, yeah, like solar flares and things. Like right
right.
now, we're protected by this magnetic field around the planet, but
Hmm.
we're losing a lot of that protection during this shifting period. And I heard a lot of there's going to be strange clouds, increased storms, increased sunlight. This kind of stuff is going to dramatically like increase in unusual weather patterns, that kind of thing, where it's just very different than what we've predicted.
Yeah, it'll be a bad day to be a white dude.
There you go.
Black folks won't have a problem. You won't. You won't be able to get enough sunscreen. You'll be wearing SPF 500.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it definitely, it's not a good time to be an astronaut. I would
Hmm.
recommend maybe the space station, not where you want to be when we have this. Because these, like in my mind, I was like, oh, well, they're outside our atmosphere, so they'd be protected.
Right.
Like they would be exposed to the same thing that they were exposed to before, but
Hmm.
not really the case. Like this
No, it's not.
protection barrier it's further out than I
No,
imagine.
it's gonna increase radiation levels by a huge amount.
Right, right. But again, we're not talking planet killer from that, right? It's just everything is going to change. And honestly, some more tornadoes and hurricanes and like that, probably not a good thing. So that's basically, we're a prepping channel, Kevin. We talk about
Yeah,
survival. What do you do?
I'm all in for this sort of stuff. So
You're all in. All
so
right.
get ready for the pole shifts, man. I mean, there's serious things to freak out about, like a lot
Okay.
of serious things to freak out about. This is also one of the like maybe maybe freak out about
Well,
it,
I think
but
like
get
everyone,
your
well, hang
bunker
on.
ready, man.
Yeah. Get your bunk. I think you're right. I think it definitely everybody agrees it's going to happen sometime.
Hmm.
It's when is the timeline? Is it going to happen next Thursday, or is it going to happen in 1,000 years? Now,
Right.
there is a lot more talk that seem to think it's, hey, we're getting worried. Like there's a lot of signs that it might be coming. And
Hmm.
that's the thing, is it usually like builds up quick and then dramatic, and that's what they're afraid of, is like, hey, we're starting to see some of these signs, and it gets a little hairy at
Yeah.
that point,
Yeah, I think some of the predictions I saw said it was going to be like, 3050, the year 3050, that it was going to happen, 30, 4050 even. But I don't
right?
think anybody knows. Nobody really knows, has any idea. It can just happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So just something to be aware of, right? You guys need to, you know, think about how you'd prepare. So basically, you would prepare the same way you'd prepare for an EMP, and you'd prepare the same way you'd prepare for kind of climate change, and you'd prepare the same way you would prepare for weather, right? Just weather being unpredictable and crazy. The idea is, you know, maybe some earthquakes, some tsunamis, there's a lot of ugly things out there. But basically EMP. All right. So we start looking at solar stuff, we look at things that are protected in Faraday cages. The problems you run into though is because it would be an ongoing unpredictable event, do you break out your equipment now? Like, oh, we had a solar flare yesterday, but my stuff's still good. And you break it out. So I would kind of feel like you'd want to break it out on an as needed basis, right? This is something where you would be like, all right, we need communications. Let's every Thursday at 2 o'clock, we'll call to the other place, whatever, and we'll talk to each other. And that might be a way to approach that, right? I would also look at how to, um, well, I don't know. So the solar, the EMP stuff, that's huge. I would look at things like EMP shield, right? Then your stuff's just protected all the time. You don't have to worry about sticking it in the Faraday cage because you're good. Just saying, that's pretty smart. That's different than, like I said, it's actually, that's the time where something like that would really thrive because you don't have to worry about, oh, shut it down and hide it. Today's going to be a bad day. And that's the thing. If you don't have mass electrical and electronic stuff working, you're not necessarily getting the news and the typical regular broadcasts saying, hey, tomorrow the sun's going to be really active. Nobody really knows about that. There's actually, like, you could go back to the old school stuff where they used to stare at the sun with a telescope and look for sunspots and things happening. And that's actually how they used to do, like, the Farmer's Almanac, was they used to, go through that. That was really a pretty cool thing. And they could predict kind of the future and how the weather and the sun was going to be based on watching the sun. That was actually one of the reasons a lot of people were very slow to the climate change idea. We're like, it's been changing. And a lot of it is really affected by the sun and, what's going on up there. So that's something to keep an eye on. I'm not sure that you can figure out how to be science guy and figure out the whole sun just to prepare for this one thing, but it may be something you want to look into. Next, how do we prepare for weather? A lot of weather things, obviously, we go back to our long-term food storage, right? Things might not grow the same, or crops might be destroyed by hurricanes, tornadoes, foul weather, whatever. But also, how are your structures? How is your roof? Do you have your house in order, right? That you can kind of, protect things. Think, will you have access to all the supplies and can maintain and take care of your property? Just realize how important it is. Now, I know sometimes people are like, well, I don't have the budget to take care of an entire farm or an entire whatever. And that may be true. But think about what's important to you. What's the essential piece of property that you have? Is my house the thing? I need to make sure my house roof is right and that it's secure, and I have a way to control the climate in there. That I would start there. And then, all right, now the animals. Do I have a good shelter for my animals? Do I have, a good shelter for my supplies? And you just slowly keep building out, right? And getting better and better.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, the people that are preppers underestimate weather events. You know what I mean? They'll stock up with a year's supply of food and not have a snow shovel. They'll stock up with a year's supply of water and not not be ready when a blizzard hits, or a tornado tears up the road up down the street, or you get a little bit of flooding. And it would suck to have all your supplies in your basement and your basement floods, but
yeah,
a lot of people prepare poorly for weather events. In my opinion, when you have that
It's
big blizzard and your power goes out and you can't heat your house, and
it's been a
you can't
recurring theme.
you can't
Yeah.
leave, and you can't, the roads are covered and you can't go anywhere. And you just have to sit in your house and put all your winter clothes on and hang out around the one candle on the living room floor while try and stay warm enough to survive. There's a lot of stuff like that I think people underestimate when it comes to weather events.
Right. Now, and I do like also, on top of that, now people automatically go to in their mind, oh, I'll be a hunter when, the world ends, right? The grocery stores close. I'm going to go hunting for the deer. Well, if everything kind of gets disrupted, what happens to wildlife? Are the same things that were there last month going to be there now? I don't know. When everybody's disoriented and kind of going different ways, those animals might shift, their patterns and things like that. So it's something to
That's
be
right.
aware of. It's basically not something you can count on. Obviously, you guys have been listening to this channel for a long time. You know that pretty much everybody's going to be like, yeah, I'll go hunt the deer and the squirrels in my backyard. And turns out that
Yeah,
won't last
that's
too
what
long.
everybody
Right.
says.
So, but we've been over that.
No.
You guys know the drill. But that's not exactly the way, to approach that. But it's pretty crazy because this is something people believe is going to happen. It's just a matter of when. And it's just kind of concerning that we keep seeing all these signs that point to now, And it turns out like,
Right.
I said I kind of made light of it, like everything's not going to collapse. But if we're open to solar storms and that kind of thing, I mean, you're talking about satellites, you're talking about the power grid, you're talking about everything possibly going away electricity wise. And obviously that's a pretty dramatic event, like we talk
Right.
about a global EMP. That's a huge event. And
Right. And they say that it would be over a year before power would be restored to the majority of
Americans,
places. And they estimate that 90% of the population of the United States would starve to death before that happened.
yeah, no,
That's just straight dying from from not having any food. So that is one of the reasons why I would say, prepping your food supplies is a big deal. It's kind of a big deal. We all know that grocery stores, they've got a 3-day food supply. If the trucks keep showing up, everything's fine, right? But if the trucks stop showing up, and everybody knows what happened, like we were all around when the COVID panic hit and everybody went out to the grocery store at the same time and everything was cleared out and people had to eat they had to eat trash meat. All the white ladies ran out and grabbed chicken breasts, and there was no chicken breast to be found. You had to eat chicken thighs. It was ridiculous. But I mean,
Kevin, that
things like that do happen. People do panic, and people do get into fist fights over stupid shit at the grocery store when they're freaking out. I think we've probably all seen heated arguments in the grocery store. Right at the beginning of COVID when everybody was losing their shit.
I think we all remember what happened when Popeyes came out with that new chicken sandwich. So, I mean, people get desperate.
Yeah, shit gets crazy sometimes,
It's
and when people are stressed out, like that temper, man, it just gets closer and closer to the surface.
no, absolutely.
So I would recommend, maybe brushing up on your fist fighting skills,
Okay.
do a little bit of practice. So when that Karen comes at you, you can just lay her out. You don't have to tangle with her. You can just pop her and knock her down.
Shut it down, and that's how it goes, right? Nah, absolutely. So, I mean, again, it's that a pole shift is not going to take out your power grid. It's not going to hurt things, but it's going to open up the planet to the power grid going down and all these things. And that's really what you're kind of afraid of here. So it's not so much that we're disrupted by it shifting. Like I said, our guys are kind of on top of the pole shifting, and we're recalculating for GPS all the time. And that kind of stuff is happening and something we plan and prepare for. However, not having a magnetic field around the earth, kind of a big deal. That really does expose us to an EMP type event. It would be caused by a CME or like that, right? Coronal mass ejection thing, but solar flares, that kind of stuff. But just understand that that's a real thing that could be a real problem for a lot of people. And it would really ruin your day if you had a global EMP. And then if you had bad weather. And then another thing I have to point out with bad weather is right now we have the newsman telling us, hey, a big hurricane is coming. It's coming in 3 days. And how many of us fail to prepare adequately when the newsman warns us? Now imagine the clouds turn gray and that hurricane just starts an hour, you have an hour advance warning
Right.
by, looking at storm clouds. That can be dramatic,
Right, right. I know there's, a lot of these events, a lot of the big hurricanes, a week or two ahead of time, and you have a good idea where it's going to land well before it happens. And still, people get fucked up with this stuff. I mean, I would not be counting on the weatherman during these sorts of events, especially, the power's out. You're not going to be watching TV. You're not going to be listening to the radio.
Maybe some protected ham radios, some of these NOAA radios, that kind of thing. That's something you guys might want to look into and, really be on top of. That way you could monitor whatever weather, is being broadcast. It turns out the government might be good for something. Like, it hasn't been my experience. And usually
there's a possibility, hypothetically.
Right. Like in a movie or something, it could be, copper bracelets might be helpful too. I don't know. It might attract it. I don't know. Like, I know I'm like, oh, if I was grounded and had, copper things and all the different things, and I'm like, and maybe I'd just get electrocuted more when I'm at work. Like it all comes at a balance. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I've been shocked a few times trying to fix an extension cord while I'm standing in 2 inches of water. That pump goes out, that sump pump goes out, and you're trying to get the plug back together, and
my
things just go sideways.
My younger boy was used to. I used to be out working on the cars. I'd be out there with an electric sander trying to rebuild that classic Firebird or whatever. And I'm out there, and my kid's like 3 years old, and he's over at the extension cord, unplugging it, plugging it back in, unplugging. And I'm like, it's gonna get you. It's gonna bite you. Just keeps doing it. Finally gets nailed. Oh, and I'm like, yo, it's a lesson learned. So,
but I mean, that's how you learn, man. That's how you learn.
There you go. Teach their own, right? I don't know. So anyway, it'd be awesome. You guys like to follow our stuff. We appreciate any like, subscribe, that kind of stuff. It really helps out the channel. It's why we keep doing it is, we do it because we love you. We want to share all this great stuff. I mean, anybody who does podcasting can tell you it's not exactly the money windfall that you thought it would be, but it's a good time, right? And we're always happy to, spend our days and hang out with you guys and, do that kind of thing. So one way you can, kind of return the love is that like and subscribe. Another one, if you support our sponsors, EMP Shield has, we actually get you $50 off if you use code BADASS. Like I said, one more reason you might want to stay ahead of the crowd and, get something. EMP Shield, they can protect you. Turns out, pole shift, another thing you could check off. Hey, that I'm prepared. Hey, looking out for you. Another thing, we have survivalandbasicbadass.com. I have the link in the show notes. You can sign up for the email list. Now, you absolutely don't have to worry that I'm going to overwhelm you with emails because so far in the last 2 years, I've sent one email. maybe 2.
Mhm.
I keep promising that I'm going to step up my game. I just keep waiting for the list to grow. That's what I'm telling myself. I'm like, the
Right.
list's growing. I just got to wait for that. And but anyway, you might want to look into that. Because hey, and we also have cool badass gear. I don't know if you guys have seen our cool coffee mugs. We got cool things like that. We got cool t-shirts, sweatshirts, that kind of stuff. They say all kinds of clever stuff. You can get that at the website. Just saying. Anyway, thoughts, concerns, email us at preppingbadass@gmail.com. Otherwise, I really appreciate you guys sticking with us. So with that, I'd say stay safe, and we will talk to you guys next week.